And we've divided this chapter into three major sections. Righteousness gives rewards, verses 1 through 7, and then picking up at verses 8 through 21, wisdom guides words. We've come to verse 22. What is said in 8 through 21 very much associates the things that leave our mouths with whether or not we're following God's standard. Wisdom having a moral aspect to it. And one of the things we noted in the earliest part of this chapter is the connection between righteousness, relationships, and rewards. When we come to verse 22, the idea conveyed is the blessing of the Lord, it maketh rich, and he addeth no sorrow with it. You ever get a wire crossed? Have a brain lapse? Have one of those ideas come out of your mouth that you substitute for something else? I did that last Wednesday. From the blessing of the Lord, I went to the fear of the Lord, but I want to show you why. First, the blessing of the Lord, it maketh rich, and he addeth no sorrow with it, verse 22. Verse 27 in this same chapter, the fear of the Lord prolongeth days. A physical reward, so to speak, connected to the fear of the Lord. But the years of the wicked shall be shortened. So there's a connection between the blessing of the Lord and the fear of the Lord. But take all of those ideas and look at Proverbs 19:23. The fear of the Lord tendeth to life. He that hath it shall abide satisfied. He shall not be visited with evil. By the way, Proverbs 19:23 is the book of Ecclesiastes in one verse. What's the ultimate conclusion of Ecclesiastes? Fear God, keep His commandments, for this is the whole of man. That word duty was supplied by the translators in Ecclesiastes 12, 13, and 14. This is the whole of man. This is what life's all about. The fear of the Lord prolongeth days. The fear of the Lord tendeth to life. The fear of the Lord is what makes life worth living. Proverbs 19:23. He that has it shall abide satisfied. He'll know what fulfillment is. And the idea he shall not be visited with evil doesn't mean there won't be difficult times, but they're not going to overcome him. Take that back to Proverbs 10:27. The fear of the Lord prolongeth days, but the years of the wicked shall be shortened. See the correlation? So now we come back to Proverbs 10:22. The blessing of the Lord, it maketh rich. Again, there's that physical reward idea, but it's not just physical reward in terms of monetary payment. This is physical reward in terms of fulfillment. Understanding what makes life worth living. He addeth no sorrow with it. It's what makes life fulfilling. Now, taking those ideas, Proverbs 10:22, Proverbs 10:27, and Proverbs 19:23, let's look at three more verses in connection with this idea of the blessing of the Lord, it maketh rich. The first verse to note is going to be Psalm 127, 1 and 2. The first part of this will likely be very familiar to you. Except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. Except the Lord keep the city, the watchman waketh but in vain. We'll use Psalm 127 to emphasize this idea of if we're going to build a house, let's build it God's way. As well we should. Psalm 127:2 follows right on the heels. It is vain for you to rise up early, to sit up late, to eat the bread of sorrows, for so he giveth his beloved sleep or rest. Psalm 127:1 is an exhortation against workaholism. So is Proverbs 10:22, Proverbs 10:27, Proverbs 19:23. And so is Proverbs 16:26. Let's go there now. Whereas it's vain to rise up early, to sit up late, to eat the bread of sorrows. He gives his beloved rest. God supplies what's needed. And if what God supplies isn't good enough, if God giving what's needed is insufficient for me to be happy, maybe I don't need to be happy. Or maybe I need to reevaluate what I find as satisfying. Why? Why would someone be motivated and driven to keep on working, to keep on laboring, to keep on overdoing, to be a workaholic? What we're about to say about the workaholic is going to be true of any kind of a holic. Proverbs 16:23, he that laboreth keeps on laboring, laboreth keeps on laboring for himself. This is the one that just work. This is the Dunkin' Donuts guy, if you remember those old commercials. Got to make the donuts, got to make the donuts. This is the one who is always having to work. Why? What's his motivation? His mouth craveth it of him. He's laboring for himself. At the center of any aholic is self. That includes the workaholic. The one that says, I'm doing it for my family to give us a bigger house. They need dad more than they need bigger rooms. The one that says, I'm doing it so that we can have a nest egg. You know, there are a lot of workaholics who have had to split their nest egg into what's called alimony because it took them too far away from home. Now let's go to Ecclesiastes one more time. What makes life fulfilling? Ecclesiastes 6, verse 7. Here's what doesn't. All the labor of man is for his mouth, yet his appetite is not filled. This is a more general statement, but it still pertains to what we have to say about this idea of laboring and engaging in sore labor and sorrowful travail, all for me. Now keep those thoughts in mind as you consider this idea of laborious sorrow. And once again, we return to Proverbs 10:22. Because when the wise man says, the blessing of the Lord, it maketh rich, and he addeth no sorrow with it. God's blessing is what makes life fulfilling. What more could you want? The King James has, he addeth no sorrow with it. Another translation, and perhaps a better one, at least one worth considering, is this: laborious sorrow adds nothing to it. So once again, we return to the idea of this. If I've got God's blessings. Now, we're not teaching sluggardness here. We're not talking about being the kind of people that just lay around and say, well, I'm blessed, I'm not going to do any labor. No, we're talking about the laborious, sorrowful workaholism that drives a person into the ground, that drives a marriage to the rocks, that drives children far away. That sort of labor adds nothing to God's blessings. That might be something that needs preached today. What do you think? That might be relevant, especially in a world where when you ask husbands, so what is your expectation for yourself as a husband? As you enter into this marriage, what do you anticipate being? Well, I want to be a provider. I want to be a provider. One of the key aspects of what we automatically see as being a husband is being a provider, and you'd better be. He that provideth not for his own, he's denied the faith and is worse than an infidel, 1 Timothy chapter 5. However, that drive to be a provider and fear of not being a provider has too often led to the one who's so focused on providing dollar signs that he doesn't provide time with family. And ultimately, it's all about self. Proverbs 10:23. It is a sport to a fool to do mischief, but a man of understanding hath wisdom. Here's another verse where a word has been supplied by the translators that actually throws off the sense just a bit. What's fun for you? What do you find entertaining? Well, what do you see as sport? It is a sport to the fool to do mischief. there are people, and maybe for us, there have been times in life where we gained entertainment from things we ought not have been doing. Well, have you ever known some of those teenagers that gained entertainment by sharing white gold all over the trees of neighbors sometime around October and November? White gold that comes in rolls and you throw it up in trees. We used to call it toilet paper, but it's way too expensive now. That's one thing as a prank when it's all in good nature. It's another thing when it's intended just to be essentially vandalism on the property of someone who really don't want to have to mess with it. There are a lot of ways in which we find sport in doing things that ought not be done. There are those that find sport in attacking people blindly on subways. There are those that find sport in engaging in misdemeanors because I'm not going to get caught. It is a sport to the fool to do mischief. Ever seen road signs go missing? Why do they go missing? Did you just tell on yourself? How often is it the case that there are those minor crimes that we see evidence of them because somebody thought it'd be entertaining? Okay. It is a sport to the fool to do mischief. The King James has, but the wise man hath understanding. That's not the idea. But a man of understanding, wisdom. What's fun for you? Making life harder for other people? Breaking the rules? Seeing what you can get away with doing? What's fun for you? Doing that which is right in the sight of God? Verse 22 speaks of that which is laborious work. Doing that which is wise and right should never seem like laborious work, because if it is, I need reprogrammed. What's fun for you? Do I gain entertainment by doing what I ought not? Or do I find fulfillment? Do I find satisfaction in simply doing what I ought? And knowing that this has been a wise choice. Are wise choices always the easy ones? But a man of understanding, well, he's going to find sport that is fulfillment, enjoyment, and engaging in wisdom. The English Standard has it put this way: wisdom is pleasure to a man of understanding. Sometimes we'll use words such as enjoyment or getting tickled. Well, shouldn't it be pleasing to us? Shouldn't we get a little tickled over doing what's right? Verse 24, because we want to finish this chapter tonight. The fear of the wicked, it shall come upon him. This is that which he anticipates but does not want. This is his dread. The fear of the wicked, it shall come upon him, but the desire of the righteous shall be granted. Flip over to 11:27 for just a moment. Maybe on the same page in your Bible. He that diligently seeketh good procureth favor, but he that seeketh mischief, it shall come upon him. In other words, there's a very real sense here of what you reap what you sow, you find what you seek. With the wicked, that which they fear is what they find. That which they dread is what they face, because, well, one often meets his destiny on the road he takes to avoid it. They set out to do that which is wrong in order to, maybe they're trying to achieve wealth. Maybe they're trying to avoid some sort of shame. The fear of the wicked, it comes upon him. And it might be the case we need to look at this verse in terms of what's the nature of their fear as compared to what's the category of the expectation of the righteous. What do we mean by that? Well, typically speaking, do the wicked fear eternity? They've discounted it. They don't look that far ahead. Yes, there are exceptions, but by and large, they're not looking that far ahead. They're looking at the here and now and any negative consequence that might be 2 steps down the road. Focused on the physical, the temporal, the material. The things they fear are going to be sickness and injury. The things they fear are going to be things such as bankruptcy. The things they fear may be insignificance. The things they fear may be obscurity. Flip side of that, the desire of the righteous shall be granted. What's the desire of the righteous? Is the desire of the righteous limited to this world and 2 steps down the road? Or does the desire of the righteous look further ahead? Yes, that which the wicked fear will come upon them. And this isn't a wholesale promise in this life. Have you ever known people who were wicked that seem to live a prosperous life in terms of physical benefits in this world? You know, money's not the only measure of satisfaction and happiness and success. And yes, there are those who live lives contrary to the will of God that seem to have happy homes. Don't ever assume that that home is as happy on the inside as what the wicked portray on the outside. There's a reason why the wise man will tell his son not to envy the way of the wicked. Because even when it looks prosperous, that doesn't mean that it is. So here we are in verse 24. The fear of the wicked shall come upon him. Just because we don't see it happen doesn't mean that those that engage in iniquity aren't facing the consequences of their actions here and later. But the desire of the righteous shall be granted. The desire of the righteous isn't about avoiding sickness. We don't look forward to it, but that's not a great fear. The desire of the righteous isn't about avoiding difficult economic circumstances. We don't look forward to it, but that's not our ultimate desire. The desire of the righteous looks much farther down the road, and it motivates us to live a certain way, so that ultimately, whatever the hiccups and the hardships and the speed bumps in life that make the road harder, we're still able to live the life that's fulfilling because our eyes are set farther ahead. Now connect this verse for just a moment to Hebrews chapter 12. Seeing we are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight, the sin that doth so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that's set before us. You mean I got to drop some things? Looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him, the joy that was set before him, could we equate that with desire, aim, goal, objective? The desire of the righteous shall be granted. For the joy that was set before him, he endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of God. Proverbs 10:24 is not a universal guarantee against hardship for the righteous, but it is wholesale assurance that we can overcome. Verse 25, Proverbs 10:25. As the whirlwind passeth, so is the wicked no more, but the righteous is an everlasting foundation. Similar ideas put into different words here. When the whirlwind passes, so is the wicked no more. Everything that he trusts and everything that he uses to define himself, when hard times come, he loses that which defines him. Christians, be really careful with this one. There have been too many that wore the name Christian that when hard times came, they felt like they lost everything that made life worth living, and they turned away from the Lord. Later in the book of Proverbs, the emphasis will be made that a just man falleth 7 times and riseth up again. In righteousness is resilience. Matter of fact, that's the idea being conveyed throughout these last 11 verses of the chapter. Righteousness gives resilience, but wickedness gives woes. As the whirlwind passeth, so is the wicked no more. He's only temporary. He's not lasting. But the righteous is an everlasting foundation. He's a firm building, steadfastness. We go ahead and move forward for the sake of time. Verse 26, as vinegar to the teeth. Doesn't that sound fun? You ever just taken a good swig of vinegar for kicks and giggles? Or as smoke to the eyes. When you sat around a campfire, how often do you have to move your chair? I never have to move mine because smoke follows beauty and it leaves me alone. What happens when that smoke hits your eyes? Burn, water, make it harder to see. As vinegar to the teeth and smoke to the eyes. Unpleasant, aggravating, so is a sluggard. There we go. So is the sluggard to them that send him, to them that commission him, as another translation has it. When you put your trust in the lazy, be ready to be disappointed. It's going to make life harder. It's going to make accomplishing the goals harder. It's simply going to be a handicap. Vinegar to the teeth, smoke to the eyes, and trusting someone who's lazy. Let's look at this one in the reverse for a moment. There's a reason why when Paul gave the qualifications for deacons, he said, let the deacons also first be proved, then let them use the office of a deacon, 1 Timothy chapter 3. What happens when leaders in the church entrust roles to those that are lazy? What does it do to the work of the Lord's church? The work doesn't get done. Someone else has to pick up the slack. There's a reason why it is very much the case that we ought to be engaged in what effort we can be engaged in doing, so as to, in hopes that maybe we'll be entrusted with a little bit more. We'll be able to labor to His glory. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father. And it's also very much the case that there are those that have said, well, no one uses me with the church. I don't ever have a job to do. Well, it might be because of unreliability. It might be because they can't expect him to be there on Sunday morning on a consistent basis. It might be because they can't expect him to fulfill whatever an objective might be within a reasonable amount of time. We all run into obstacles and delays. We understand that. But we're talking about the ones that are unreliable because of inactivity. As vinegar to the teeth and as smoke to the eyes, so is the sluggard that sinned unto him. How many people see a fire and say, hey, I want to go put my head in the smoke? How many people see a bottle of vinegar and say, I'm thirsty? How many people see a sluggard and say, I want to lean on him? Verse 27, the fear of the Lord prolongeth days, but the years of the wicked shall be shortened. Now, we've already hit on this in terms of the way that it connects to the idea of making life rewarding. When we read proverbs such as this, and we keep it in the context of ancient Israel, we have to remember that there was a promise that God gave to Israel. We mentioned it last week. If you look at Deuteronomy, beginning in chapter 4 and really moving through the rest of the book, Moses will repeatedly emphasize that when they would keep God's commandments and statutes and judgments, they would prolong their days in the land. Deuteronomy 4:1, that you might live in the land. In other words, stay and dwell. Deuteronomy 4, I believe it's verse 26, if they would not keep God's statutes and judgments, then they would not live. Deuteronomy 4:40, they would prolong their days. Matter of fact, if you're moving through the Old Testament and you find that phrase, prolong your days, go ahead and let that connect you to this physical promise God had for Israel in terms of you will be able to remain in the land and prolong your days if you heed God's commandments, statutes, judgments. What happened to Israel in 586 BC? Or what happened to the nation of Judah in 586? What had happened to the northern kingdom of Israel almost 140 years earlier? Exile, captivity. They didn't prolong their days. The fear of the Lord prolongs days, but the years of the wicked shall be shortened. Yes, there is very much a sense in which this can be studied in the context of ancient Israel, but there's also very much a sense in which the fear of the Lord still prolongs days, in that when I practice the fear of the Lord, I'm going to practice wisdom. The fear of the Lord is a beginning of wisdom. Proverbs 9:10. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. Proverbs 1:7. And when we practice the fear of the Lord, it will result in having a wiser outlook on life. And when I have a wiser outlook on life, I'm less likely to put my finger in a light socket. When I have a wiser outlook on life, I'm less likely to engage in activities that are going to shorten my life expectancy. When I have a wiser outlook on life, I'm going to make wiser decisions. Remember the counsel that Paul gave to children in Ephesians 6? Children, obey your parents in the Lord. For this is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with thee, thou mayest live long upon the earth. By the way, Paul's reminder to them connected back to what Moses had told Israel. God had told Israel through the Ten Commandments in Exodus 20. Again, the point here being this: the fear of the Lord absolutely prolongs days, not only in ancient Israel, but yes, for us today, because there is a sense in which when we accept counsel, when we employ a fear of the Lord, we're going to make wiser decisions. Verse 28. The hope of the righteous shall be gladness. This is another verse that hits on the idea of fulfillment. The hope, the expectation, the looking forward of the righteous shall be gladness. There's going to be a satisfaction. The righteous do not set unrealistic expectations, because the righteous base their expectations on God's promises. And none of God's promises are unrealistic. Paul would say that he's able to do exceeding abundantly above all that we ask or think, Ephesians 3. God never promised me a Ferrari, not even an old beat-up used one. But He promised eternity. The hope of the righteous shall be gladness. It will be fulfilled. But not only does that apply in terms of the long hope. When we employ righteousness, even our expectations in this life tend to be meted and moderated to a point of having a reasonable outlook. We find fulfillment. But the expectation of the wicked shall perish. You can see this really as another way of saying what was said back up in verse 24. We go ahead and move forward. Verse 29. The way of the Lord is strength to the upright, but destruction. How many have the King James Version in front of you? You have those words shall be written in italics? Mark them out. The idea is not to use destruction as the subject of another clause. It's not destruction shall be to the workers of iniquity. If we take this and diagram it, then it's going to be the subject of the sentence is the fear of the Lord. Or the way of the Lord, rather. The way of the Lord, God's way. His paths, His standard, His plan, His precepts. living life according to His statutes and judgments. The way of the Lord is, the first part of the sentence, strength, a stronghold, a bulwark to the upright. God's way is security and refuge and protection to the upright. But, coordinating conjunction, linking what was just said with what's about to be said, the way of the Lord is still the subject. And His way is destruction to them that work iniquity. The same way that His strength, protection, and a stronghold to the upright is going to be the downfall of those that work iniquity. Paul would say no man can have two masters. Know ye not that whom ye yield yourselves servants to obey, His servants ye are whom ye obey, whether of sin unto death or of obedience unto righteousness. Jesus said no man can have two masters. He'll either hate the one and love the other. He'll hold to the one and despise the other. Paul said that in Romans 6. Jesus said that in Matthew 6. How does the two-master idea apply here? The wicked are bringing about their own downfall, but the wicked that practice the level of hypocrisy and claim to be following the fear of the Lord, that's ever more going to bring about their downfall. The way of the Lord is strength to the upright, but it's destruction to the workers of iniquity. I can't serve the two masters. I can't claim to be following the way of the Lord while working at night for the devil. The Lord can't be my strength and my destruction at the same time. And there is no 50-50. His way is going to be strength because in one sense we're walking in the light as He is in the light. And there's security and assurance there. His way is going to be strength because there's that promise, there's that assurance, the expectation of the righteous, that hope that's set ahead. His way is strength because we're not relying on ourselves, we're leaning on Him. But to the workers of iniquity, His way will bring about their demise. Verse 30, the righteous shall never be removed. You might connect this to what was said back up in verse 25 about the righteous being an everlasting foundation. The righteous shall never be removed. There's a firmness, there's a steadfastness, stability. But the wicked shall not inhabit the earth. Instability. Those whose lives are unstable, those whose behavior is unstable, may be pulling back just a little bit of the curtain on some deeper issues. No, we can't always guarantee what's going to happen tomorrow in terms of all of the material stability in this life. But there is encouragement here that the righteous have a level of stability. They'll never be removed. They're relying on the Lord. And that's the reason why. Verse 31, the mouth of the just bringeth forth wisdom. But the froward, that is the dishonest, the deceptive, the fraudulent, perverse tongue shall be cut out. What kind of words tend to leave my mouth? The mouth of the just brings forth, literally sprouts wisdom. This is the idea of the fruit of the lips being wisdom. But the froward tongue shall be cut out. Have you ever known anyone that couldn't talk unless he was telling a lie? Ever known anyone that would rather tell a lie? He would rather tell two lies and make things complicated than tell the simple truth. Not even trying to keep himself out of the trouble. He'd just rather lie to see who he can dupe. There's something wrong with that individual. Deeply. And yes, a punishment awaits. The froward tongue shall be cut out. Not literally, but when you've known such an individual, do you listen to him anymore? Do his words carry any meaning? How long does it take for the habitual chronic liar to gain a level of trust and credibility? even after repentance. The boy who cried wolf. There's a sense in which that boy lost his tongue, not because he couldn't make a sound, but because no one would listen. Verse 32, the lips of the righteous know what is acceptable. In other words, they're going to find the words that are going to be the most acceptable way to say what needs to be said. But the mouth of the wicked speaketh frowardness. Will the righteous engage in fraudulent speech? Now, will the righteous always give every detail? There are times when I don't need to give every detail. We've hit on this idea before. Jesus didn't. He told the apostles, there are many other things I want to say to you, but you can't bear them now. At the same time, the righteous are not going to engage in lying. They're going to find the acceptable way to convey the ideas that need to be conveyed. And there may be times when we're not able to say it all at once. We need to introduce one idea in an acceptable way and give the audience a little bit of time to chew on it, and then take it a step forward in time to come. The wicked, no, they'll just lie to you about it. They'll just tell you what you want to hear, or tell you what they want you to hear in order to achieve the objectives that they desire. The mouth of the wicked speaketh frowardness. That's all the time we have for tonight. When next we meet, we'll pick up in Proverbs 11.